about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello.
Good evening, Denise Simon. Time for a sit rep, and I'm not real sure that I'm ready for one. But having said that, I got to get my game face on, and I got to get ready for this, because as bad of news as you are going to lay on me tonight, I got a carload of people with me. Tonight's the sit rep for the world, as we say. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's episode or edition of the Drive Time Situation Report. You've got on one end of this conversation the great, fabulous, and talented Denise Simon. On the other end of it, you got me. And you're in my car driving home tonight after a long day at work. I've seen a few headlines. I had to endure last night's NCAA championship ball game that was quite demoralizing if you were a University of Georgia fan. Very difficult to go to sleep after that, don't you think, Denise?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome along. This is a unique radio show. We are not going to break for any commercials or any promo spots for the next 52 minutes, about 51 minutes at this point. We're going to get a situation report from the great Denise Simon. This is something I receive usually on a nightly basis. Once a week, we slap the record button on our conversation. We watch our profanity. We watch our overly opinionated comments. And we make this G-rated, I'd say it's more like probably PG-13 rated, so that we can bring you along and air this over the terrestrial AM/FM airwaves. Again, you know, something might happen on this sit rep or this radio show, because I could drop out. I'm talking to you on an iPhone right now. I'm driving through the hood. Denise, you know where I'm at, over here by the Atlanta Waterworks and what is this, Bolton Road.
Oh,
not a good
yeah.
place to be if you're not armed, but thankfully I am armed. So Denise, let's timestamp it and get after it. We got some bad news to talk about tonight. I got a feeling about that.
It is 8:20 p.m. on the 9th of January in the year of our Lord 2018.
Thank you very much. Nobody does that better. Thank you for keeping the bar raised when you tell the date and time of this sit rep. All right, Denise. Steve Bannon, Donald Trump. The hell's going on, girl?
Bannon is officially out at Breitbart as of today. We don't know where he's going after this. The other fascinating thing that is part of this is Sirius XM Radio, or whatever it is, Sirius Radio, apparently has also canceled Breitbart's radio. As a result, yeah, apparently there is so many bad fingerprints in all of this now. It's manifesting itself. So Sloppy Steve, as we've come to know him in the last couple of days, we don't know where he's going after this, but it won't be Breitbart. I would argue that he's probably going to meet up with his Chinese fugitive oligarch friend, and I have a feeling that he's going to necessarily relaunch some kind of a media operation that would compete perhaps with Breitbart or Daily Caller, which we can't necessarily call anymore alternative media because we are now finding that broadcast media, cable media, is also picking up a lot of the investigative reports and articles and stories that they're doing. So they've become essentially quite mainstream. So he may choose to build something again, this time without any constraints that he had under the Mercer family.
Right, the billionaires that funded, or for a large part funded Breitbart.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Let's step back a second, because as you and I were talking about before we hit the record button on this, everything that's going on right now that you and I are shaking our heads at, that obviously, and I would assume many of our listeners are shaking their heads at, is extremely convoluted and complex. If you don't mind, step back and, for the sake of all of us, encapsulate in layman terms, as simplistic as you can, what did Bannon do that is causing this caca storm?
Well, what he did essentially was he attacked several of the people within the Trump administration, Trump political orbit, that he came into conflict with. And that goes back to Paul Manafort. It goes back to Jared and Ivanka Kushner. It may even go back to Gerald McMaster and a few others. But he had spent a significant amount of time with this Michael Wolff character who wrote the book Fasten, whatever the hell it is, Fire and Fury.
Fire and Fury, right?
Yeah. And he had some dinners with some people, and apparently there may have been some recordings of conversations that were either in context or out of context, of which this author, who, by the way, has reached over 1 million copies sold as of today, attempted to, I would say, mobilize and coordinate and, compress into a book. He even used some terms after that to include things like treason, because of Donald Jr.'s meeting with a few Russians that included Natalia Veselnitskaya, who obviously has a very close association with the Fusion GPS people, who has a very tight association with Privazon Holdings, which is a very tightly held operation of the Kremlin that has a base in Cyprus, where a lot of the funny money seem to be rolling. I mean, I can't compress this down into a paragraph, and I wish I could. There's a lot of moving parts, so that's as best as I can do. The White House pushed back on the book. They pushed back on Bannon, where Trump said he's not only lost his job, he's lost his mind. Bannon attempted to apologize. It was somewhat of a backhanded apology for what he said, but he didn't take back what he said. I mean, he didn't say, let me correct the record, or let me put it in context. He just said my timing was bad, or something like that. So anyway,
right, hold on a second. Let me ask you this. Why did Bannon do the things that he did? Was it because he had a true loyalty to Trump, and he was concerned about some of these people that were in Trump's orbit, or was he trying to undermine the presidency?
It could be one or the other, or all, or more. He could have some connective tissue to a few Russians himself, for all we know. If you look at the spirit of Breitbart itself, in some of the articles that they have done since, January, I would say, or even, in recent months, the spirit of a lot of those articles have not been anti-Russian. They've only been pro-Trump. So we could have some other moving parts here that we haven't yet come to determine. I only put that out there not to infer that there's, some nefarious connection there, but I only want to suggest that we keep a very wide open mind on these things, because every day we have more and more revelations, and these revelations don't come to us in a timeline. They come to us in snippets, which force us to kind of go back in time, and then we it's very hard to put all of these pieces together. But I think it is something that we have to be somewhat neutral in drawing any kind of conclusions and who we're going to attach our wagon to here at this point, until we start getting some rather comprehensive summaries on these things. And I don't know when that's going to be, Don, to be honest with you. It could be next year. It could be never. All I know is that there are so many moving parts. In fact, I'm looking at a moving part that takes us actually back to 2014. So,
all right. Let me go off onto a little bit of a tangent here. Your buddy from Breitbart, Matthew Boyle?
Boyle.
Yeah. What has he been writing about lately? Is he still there? Is he a possible casualty of all this as well?
I think he was more on the radio side of late than he was on, or maybe even the management side of late. I have not seen him actually do any articles recently. In fact, I see some rather new names when I look at intermittently at Breitbart. I'm not a faithful reader of Breitbart. I look, some things come on my radar maybe once a day, but it may not necessarily. In fact, I looked at something today that talked about how high the murder rate was in 2017 in Mexico as opposed to 2016. Had nothing to do with Russia, Trump, or any of that other kind of thing. So I'm not a faithful reader. But I don't dismiss them altogether either.
All right. In your opinion right now, the credibility factor of Breitbart and specifically the print medium of Breitbart, what people can find, where is that at right now?
I would say Breitbart is careful in what they put out. What they put out is factual. I would also say that it, from what I can determine, it is reliable and truthful. But the bigger question is it the full story, or is it only part of the story? In other words, when you get finished reading a story and you're analyzing it a little bit, do you have more questions that you got to go someplace else to go find the rest of the story? I suggest that is necessarily the case, but that doesn't put Breitbart in a class of its own. You can find that with any journalism that's out there. In order to tell a whole story, you'd have to have an HBO documentary that went on for 52 straight weeks, Right.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at the damage to the Trump administration that Wolf and Bannon have introduced to the American people over the past couple of weeks. Where is that at?
Well, yeah, we've heard here since this all broke that nothing but Trump is not mentally fit, and his psychology to handle the job of presidency is highly in question, such that we've even had one particular psychiatrist that had gone over to Congress and briefed 14 or 15 Democrat Congress members, House members, on his unfitness. Now, otherwise known as the Goldwater rule. I would argue that this woman, did that essentially illegally, because you cannot give a prognosis, a mental fitness prognosis on anybody without not examining them. And she obviously didn't do that. But she also gave this report and suggested that she come back with follow-up reports. So I would say that some of those Democrats in Congress have somewhat mobilized and somewhat leaked to some members of media. In this case, it may have been CNN or MSNBC, and they've all necessarily gotten together, and they have been on this harangue. They have been on this drumbeat for, a week or more. Now, as of today,
what is their basis for this? I mean, yeah, Trump's doing a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily agree with. You and I've had lengthy conversations about that multiple nights over the past year. But, I don't think either one of us, and I may be wrong, you may feel this way. I don't think that the man is unfit or unstable or mentally inept or incapable of being the president of the United States. I just think he's making a lot of poor decisions, especially when it comes to surrounding himself with the right people.
Well, there has been some of that question. We can see that, he might be impolite and he might be discourteous. He might, in some cases, even be disrespectful. He might even be petulant. But that's not a characteristic that is new just because he's president. He's always been that way in his business.
That's also a characteristic of about 85% of New Yorkers.
That doesn't excuse his behavior as president necessarily.
No, I'm not saying that it is. I was making light of that, but
sure. But the thing
there is no basis for him being unfit as a president or mentally unstable, in your opinion, correct?
No. I mean, if you're impolite or if you're petulant, that doesn't make you unfit to be a president, correct?
All right. So, we've got the damage of this book, and the Trump administration, prior to them actually moving into the White House, has been trying to play clean up, mop up, dealing with damage repair, since prior to them moving into the White House. This is just one more of those things. In your opinion, the validity of this book, and I know I'm assuming you haven't read it yet.
Correct.
Well, what are your thoughts on the honesty, the validity, the accuracy of this book?
Well, the author actually says it himself, that these were, I guess, integrated snippets of conversations of which he put together and then created a summary of, because he had interviewed so many people, both on campus, meaning on White House grounds or in the White House, and then outside of the White House. There are several that have actually pushed back and said, well, I didn't say that. That was not accurate. I've never met with him. He may have, read some things somewhere that somebody said something, so he took that and created a conclusion. So this White House was clearly not prepared for the hourly Scud missiles that it was receiving, that were being launched, but every single day by the hour. It was clearly not prepared to handle this. And I guess Hope Hicks is in charge of the communications, or George Stephanopoulos, or Papadopoulos, not Stephanopoulos, Papadopoulos, or Reince Priebus as chief of staff, or whoever else was there, including Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I would say there needs to be an organization that is recruited and guided with due to their previous employment history, that can do nothing but deal with this kind of stuff all day long, such that the other activities that have to go on out of this White House, that is the people's business, actually gets more attention and focus and stick-to-itiveness than what we're getting. Because, I mean, one minute we're talking about, immigration. The next minute we're talking about individual mandate. The next thing we're talking about is comprehensive tax reform. Then we're talking about infrastructure. And oh, by the way, we're talking about Steve Bannon. Or oh, by the way, we're talking about Robert Mueller. Oh, by the way, we're talking about James Cook. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there are so many things that have bubbled to the surface. It's chaos, and we don't look good to the rest of the world.
Yeah, stop right there. That word chaos. Now, you and I, for months and probably years, have been discussing the word chaos. And that is a word and an action that is fomented by the left. Why is it that an alleged Republican administration, Republican Congress, why is that degree of chaos being allowed to be fostered, continued, expanded on? I mean, you and I have said this over and over again. The last 8 years that we had to deal with Barack Obama and his administration was extremely tiring and, quite frankly, the source of a lot of gray hair for many of us. The first year of the Trump administration, we can't even compare the stress, the anguish, and the frustration that we've got on a daily basis, to where we're sitting there shaking our heads going, oh my God, it can't get any worse. And we want the man to succeed. We wanted Barack Obama to succeed.
Where we really are is we are in disorder. We are in dysfunction. We have turmoil here, and that's a Cloward Piven strategy, by the way.
Of course,
that the left knows quite well. Now, while the Obama administration on their decisions and policy initiatives were outrageous, they were controlled and well organized because they had major teams that worked in that White House. I mean, they had a colossally huge staff in that White House that worked on these things. And sometimes that we would even get blindsided. I mean, we were absolutely blindsided that he was going to go normalize relations with Cuba. It's like, where in the world did that come from? So they took on these tasks because they had laid out a plan, and they assigned them to these committees within the White House. Then they brought people in, and they had these little seminars or these little committee meetings over here, and they would come to some kind of a policy and plan decision that they would hand over to Obama and announce them. This Trump White House is not organized that way. In fact, I would argue it's not even organized. Now, after Reince Priebus left and we ended up with John Kelly, we were like, okay, now we're going to get some organization. One man can't do it, Don. One man can't do it. And I think in some cases, John Kelly has actually been taken out of his normal sandbox of being just your garden variety chief of staff to going on and doing other things that are way outside of his resume. So I still don't think you mentioned last week dealing with Congress. Yes.
I mean, when's the last time that a chief of staff was doing that?
Well, I'm not to say that wouldn't happen from time to time, but not on a regular basis, such that it pulls him out of being a 24/7 chief of staff. The chief of staff is your firewall. The chief of staff is the one that has his own staff that eliminates the chaos and eliminates the interference and eliminates the disorder and puts it into controlled conditions. And that's not where we are. If that was the case, then Trump wouldn't be coming off with these ridiculous tweets.
All right, go back to Wolf a second. Did you ever find out who let him in the White House? Who let him have access to these people? Well, it's got to be Priebus, is it not?
We don't know when it happened. For that matter, it could have been.
I don't think it happened under Kelly's watch.
I don't either. But I mean, for all we know, he was given some kind of a visit, a long-term, meaning a month's access, perhaps. Blue pass into this White House, and that could have been done by Papadopoulos. That could have been done by Michael Flynn. I mean, we have no idea. Could have been done
Yeah,
by.
but ultimately, isn't it Priebus's responsibility or the chief of staff to dictate, restrict, allow whoever is going to be accessing the White House and the people that work in the White House?
I don't know. That would seem reasonable, a reasonable conclusion, but I don't know.
Think so if he's the gatekeeper.
Well, but here's the thing. There are people, I mean, we don't have access to the White House visitor logs and who they're going in to see. So if you've got somebody that's going in to see, maybe they went in to see, Sebastian Gorka, for all we know. I have no idea. And because, once somebody comes in, they have to be approved by Secret Service. So if they're approved by Secret Service and Secret Service gives them the pass, anybody else that sees them in the hallway says, okay, well, so we know that they went through these firewalls, these tripwires, and he's got a pass, so I guess he's okay. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. Maybe it was at the time when Reince Priebus was chief of staff, but maybe Reince didn't even know about it. We have no idea. Remember, that was early, real dysfunction.
Yeah, sadly, I don't remember those days. It's been so dysfunctional. Ladies and gentlemen, let me take a second here and let you know what you're listening to. If you're a first-time listener, we welcome you to the Drive Time Situation Report. The background noise and the poor audio that you hear on my end is that I am speaking to you from my cell phone in my car. I'm receiving my nightly situation report from Denise Simon, who is in her bunker down near Tampa, Florida. My name is Don Neuen. I'm the co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. Every night when I drive home from work, after I call Donna Fiducia to tell her how much I love her, I get on the phone with Denise Simon and I get a SITREP from her. She brings me up to speed because all day long I'm working in the world of rock and roll. Denise is living in the world of intelligence and analyzing said intelligence. So I count on her. I don't have the time to go to Facebook, social media, read articles, check out what the AP's got, check out what's on Drudge. I don't have that. I don't have time to go to Founders Code during the day, and that's Denise's website. So I rely solely on her to bring me up to speed, to get me the concise information that is just critically important for all of us to know. Denise, let me take a second and encourage everybody to go to your website, founderscode.com. One word, founders with an S, founderscode.com. That's Denise's personal website. I encourage you to enter your email address and sign up for her daily newsletter. You'll get a notice every time she's posted a new article. The one thing that you can take to the bank with regard to what Denise Simon posts is she vets it for you. She doesn't stick up fake news. She doesn't stick up things that she hasn't researched and that she can't back up with the documentation needed. She reads probably 50,000 words a day, if not more. She's constantly reading books. And that all translates into one thing, making Don Neuen appear to be more intelligent on a daily basis than he actually is. And if you want good advice, you need to do the same thing. You can jerk around on social media, and you can sift through all the articles you want to, and you can post stuff on Facebook and Twitter that make you look like a fool 24 hours later when everybody's going, hey, that's bogus. Or you can go to founderscode.com and start following Denise Simon and start adding credibility to everything you do on social media. So having said that, Denise, how was that for an endorsement?
Thank you. Don't oversell me, but thank you for that.
No, there's no overselling. You want the real? You want vetted information? You start following Denise Simon at founderscode.com. All right, Denise, let's get back.
All right. Well, here, let me make some corrections here. Little Mr. Wolf actually had earlier access. He had access before the Trump organization took over the White House. He was in Trump Tower. And it appears that Bannon was the one that gave him the access. He did, in fact, have a blue badge, which is an appointment badge from the Secret Service. Media has what is called gray badges. So The blue badge, I guess, has some other different kind of distinction where there's an appointment, and that apparently was given by Steve Bannon, who was the chief strategist at the time.
You know, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to. The more you talk, the more Steve Bannon and his objective appears to be to bury Trump. Now, tell me that I'm wrong.
I can't.
Tell me that you think I'm probably wrong.
I can't.
Tell me that there's a pretty good chance that I'm not right.
Look, here's the deal. Bannon clearly had his own agenda, and he was trying to certainly guide/mentor the Trump operation to his agenda. And I think there was some early success in doing that. It took a while before some of those people in the Trump orbit accepted it, but they, some of them, I think, came around. Now that he's gone.
Hold on, stop right there. And what was Bannon's agenda that he was trying to mold the piece of clay of the Trump administration?
Well, it's not a single mission objective, Don. I mean, there were many moving parts to it. One of them essentially was what we've come to been told now is nationalism, concentrating on all things America. And there's not anything necessarily wrong with that. But what did that necessarily become to look like? Well, was it immigration? I would say the answer to that's yes. Was it coming to promoting and endorsing and supporting the military and law enforcement? I think the answer to that is yes. So with those three things, I don't think that we can be in dispute with Bannon on. Whatever else was on his mission objective is still yet to be defined. But let me kind of say this. Bannon's gone officially now, as of today, even from Breitbart. And so in the last 24 hours, what has happened? What is it that Trump has done in the last 24 hours that have us, I would say, a little on the ruh-roh side? Well, three things. One would say that he is now obviously appears to be capitulating when it comes to DACA. That he called it today a bill, meaning legislation of love. Now, doesn't that sound a lot like Jeb Bush?
Yeah.
Okay. The other one, that he's going to Davos. Well, that ought to have that would have Steve Bannon's head, exploding, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Why don't you explain to everybody about Davos, because first of all, you're a heck of a lot easier to hear than I am. You'll do a better job of it, but I can tell you that what I know about it is that people like you and me are going to frown on this big time.
Well, essentially what it is, it's a global economic forum. And you have not only world leaders, but you've got the top big companies out there that say, hey, this is what we need going forward. And you politicians of any country that, attends Davos and media need to help us achieve these things. And so this is essentially where large corporations dictate to global leaders policy.
Well, what's the difference between Davos and the Bilderbergs? Or CFR or the Trilats?
I would say nothing really, except Davos apparently has the best of those reputations. It's an economic forum that previously a lot of hedge fund people go to, large the Boeings may necessarily go to, those kinds of things. Now, I know Bill Clinton went in 2000. Biden went last year. Obama did not.
Bush and Obama. W and Obama did not, from what I recall.
Correct. But
right, well, those
it's
are
kind
two
of
things. What's the third thing, though?
It's globalism. I mean, it's forced interconnectivity. And if you want to go back to this nationalism thing, that kind of just blows that whole thing up.
Yeah, they're not compatible.
No, not by a long stretch. And then,
So we got DACA, we got Davos. What else we got? What's the third thing? Outside of the University of Georgia not winning the SEC championship game.
I would say it was probably the drilling. Now, remember, it was only like middle of last week that Trump comes out and says, hey, we're going to open up, underwater drilling in the Gulf of Mexico or wherever we're going to put it, in the Atlantic or the Pacific. Well, all of a sudden, as of today, we're taking the Gulf of Mexico, like right off of Florida, we're taking out of it. So he capitulated, he backed off on that one. I mean, that didn't even last a week.
Well, one of the problems that that we've been noticing and acknowledging for quite some time now is that Trump speaks before he acts. He speaks before he thinks sometimes, and when you do that, you are forced into walking back on things sometimes.
Well, I agree. So when he goes to open this up last week, don't you think he should have had some phone calls with like the governor of Florida, who apparently was one of the ones that pushed back, who, by the way, is about to be termed out. And now we have Congressman Ron DeSantis, running for governor officially of Florida, which I'm great with. I mean, I like Ron DeSantis a lot, but if you're going to make those kinds of decisions that would impact an entire state or several states, meaning Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi, whatnot, then you ought to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them before you come out with some edict like, "Hey, we're going to open up offshore drilling." A week later, maybe.
I noticed that you left Alabama out of that.
Whatever, Alabama. Okay.
Was that on purpose?
No.
Hey, listen, on a sidebar note, I really felt that second half quarterback for Alabama
Tua
did a stellar job.
Tua, and I can't pronounce his last name because it's somewhere
either.
between I don't know,
yeah. He, and you know what? What a fine young man.
Yeah, he's
in his
some
presentation.
Part of Samoan / Hawaiian. So as a consequence.
There's two things about that young man that struck me as a little odd. Number one, if you recall, his eye black that he was using, that helps the reflection of the lights for any of those that don't know. He had, when he first started in the second half, he had that in the shape of crosses under his eyes. Did you notice that, Denise?
Of course.
Okay. Did you also notice, and I'm going to speculate on this, that somebody told him to take those crosses off his face because he was having a lot of tight camera shots of his face when he was playing on the field and when he was off the field on the sidelines? Because as a game progresses, usually that black eye mark smears, smudges, sweat makes it run a little bit, and just by touching your face, you end up getting it kind of all over your face.
Which he did.
That did not happen.
Yeah, it did.
No, it was not that bad. It disappeared. It disappeared completely.
Well, it may have towards the end of the game, but at some point it was, in fact, smeared and running in a bad way.
Well, that I didn't notice as much as you did that. The other thing that was a little bit strange is that when he was being interviewed by the 6'9" Amazon woman that was down on the field, I can't remember what her name is, but
who is a Georgia alumni.
I know she is, but she's also like a freak of nature. He ended up asking him a question, and before he even started, he apologized to his mother and father for thanking Christ.
Well,
I didn't understand what the deal was with that.
We don't know if that's what We don't know if that's what the apology was for, but the way he said it, it sounded like it. Yes.
Yeah, it sure did. All right, well, enough of the NCAA football, because many of you people that are listening to this show may be in other countries and have absolutely no idea what Denise and I are talking about. All right, let's get back to DACA, Denise. What's this meaning?
Well, it clearly means that we're going to give them, I don't know if I'm going to call it officially amnesty, but we're going to give them indefinite status, which means it is in fact in violation. To do that is in violation, interestingly enough, of Obama's executive order. Because Obama's executive order on DACA says we will accept applications for consideration. And it was also the word deferred, which is the D in DACA, meaning we're going to defer action until sometime later. So if Trump does do what he essentially said today, which is giving them indefinite status in the United States, about 780,000 of them, that actually doesn't follow the Obama executive order. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
He has a way out, and he's not taking it.
Are these people going to be able to vote or no?
Well, yeah.
In state elections as well as federal?
How are you going to make the distinction?
Well, are they going to be considered citizens of the United States?
It doesn't matter. You have a governor like Terry McAuliffe who gave him that status. I mean, he's given them the status of prisoner, of felons. So it doesn't matter, does it? If you have long-term protective status, in other words, a permanent green card, Don, I would argue you actually have more benefits, more whatevers than just a normal human, American citizen.
All right, you and I spoke, I think it was last week, in one of our unrecorded SITREPs about the fact that this may be a move on the Republican Party to try to get many of these 800,000 dreamers to become a little warmer and fuzzier with the Republican Party, hoping to gain votes in that manner or support in that manner. You still feel that way?
No, I don't think I said that. If I did, then I didn't mean to. But they are not. If the Trump White House is going to be this generous to the dreamers, the DACA recipients, it's not going to engender them to the Republican Party by a long stretch. They have already been indoctrinated and essentially declared loyalty to the Democrats because the money goes around in that circle. Mm-hmm. So when you have La Raza or you have Casa de Maryland or any of those others organizations out there, of which I would also include a lot of the churches, including the Catholic Church and the Methodist Church, the money goes around and around in a circle. And so those donations are made to the politicians, and the politicians are going, gee, okay, well, we'll make sure that you get some, HHS money or some grant money, which then becomes the money goes to the politician, but the money going back comes from the taxpayer. So we're paying twice.
What kind of pushback is he getting from the Republicans in Congress, as well as the conservative media? I can only imagine what
after
Tucker
this
Carlson
meeting today.
is saying.
After this meeting today for an hour.
The
Trump base is not very happy. They're not very happy at all. I know Tucker Carlson's not very happy. I mean, he came out initially tonight and said, "What do we elect him for then?" Now I don't know. Kevin McCarthy, he's not very happy. You got a couple of Republican Congress people that were in that 55-minute meeting today or 1-hour meeting today, and they're not very happy either. Now the Democrats, they left that feeling somewhat empowered again.
Look into the crystal ball. Why did this go down like it did then? Why did he cave?
Well, he wants the wall, and it's kind of like Obama came out and said we're closing Gitmo. Well, Trump's big thing was we're going to have a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it. Well, we pretty much know that I don't think Mexico's going to pay for it, but we got to have a wall. So the wall has got to be funded. Well, that's $18 billion that this administration has asked for. That's on top of already, that's just for the wall. So that's 18 billion on top of what we already do because of illegalness. So,
yeah.
You give me the 18 billion, I'll give you DACA. That's just where we are.
Yeah. I had a feeling it was the art of the deal.
No, that wasn't any art that I saw. None. Zero.
No. You know what I'm saying, though. You know what I'm saying. He's working a deal, and he caved on DACA to get his wall.
Yeah, but that didn't. DACA, it isn't even up until March.
Yeah.
So DACA should never have been part of the conversation, and he should have delivered that to the the Democrats today. He should have said, you know what, we're going to take this and we're going to apply some litigation to it. We're going to have it legally challenged in the court system. So DACA's off the table. Now, if there's something else that you guys want, maybe we'll talk about that, because along with the 18 billion that I need, I also want to defund Planned Parenthood. I also want to get rid of the Export-Import Bank, which he's not going to do because he happens to be a supporter of it, which I'm clearly not. We're going to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which into itself is a whole nother, corrupt operation. So he should have put some other things on the table to panic those Democrats that go, well, Export-Import Bank's more important to us than DACA. Let them expose their cards. And he didn't do any of that. So there was no art of the deal.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When's the last time? And you and I've had, well, you figure 5 sit reps minimum a week for the past 52 weeks, 250 or 60 sit reps that we've had since he got into office. When's the last time, Denise, that you said, hey, he did something I wanted him to do? That's the big problem. And yeah. I know there are things that you are pleased with and that we are pleased with, and many Americans are pleased with. There are a lot of great things that he's accomplished, and he's accomplished them under massively adverse conditions.
Correct.
I would challenge any president to accomplish what Trump has accomplished under the circumstances that he has been faced with. But the bottom line is, many, many times in these sit reps, Denise, you and I are both shaking our head going, God almighty.
Well, look, I was very, very happy with the tax reform. At least on the surface, I think that I am, until we have some states here that are, taking some specific action on that. I believed very much in his travel suspension, his executive order saying, hey, we're not going to take these people in for a while until we do such and such. And he blew that one because he didn't handle that one right. And now I'm going to chalk that up to he was a neophyte in the system. But he had the real opportunity to repeal Obamacare, and I didn't see an art of the deal on that one either. He couldn't get, he just couldn't get that where it needed to be. Now in the tax deal, we did eliminate the individual mandate. Happy for that, but we still have Obamacare out there. So, he's done some very good things for the military. He's done some very good things for the VA. But he's not pushing some other things that just absolutely need to be there. And, I would put some of these Democrats into a real panic, but today they felt empowered again for the second time.
Well, when is the last time in the past year, roughly a year, that the Democrats have actually been in a panic? And if they have been in one, it lasts over the weekend, and it's a memory by Monday.
Exactly. And here's a fascinating thing. In this meeting today, who was sitting on either side of him?
I don't know. I didn't see the meeting. You did. Tell me.
Well, on one side of him, we have Leahy, who is, I don't have any use for the guy. On the other side, it wasn't Chuck Schumer. It was the guy from Illinois. What's his name?
So he, bottom line is he flanked himself with Democrats.
Yes.
Well, that's what he's done most of his life.
Yeah. To the point he even thought about running for president, having Oprah Winfrey as his running mate.
Yeah. I tell you what. All right. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking to you now for the better part of an hour. My name is Don Neuen. I co-host a show with Donna Fiducia called Cowboy Logic Radio. That show airs Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. You've got on the other end of this conversation Denise Simon. She hosts her own show, The Denise Simon Experience, that airs Thursday nights at 9 p.m. So where does it air? Well, it airs exactly where you're listening to this, whatever you're listening to this on, your phone, your computer, your radio station. But we do need to give a big hat tip to our networks and our affiliates. Our network is talkamericaradio.us. That is a digital network. We pump out two streams over the internet worldwide. And Denise, I'm here to tell you that we got listeners all over the world.
Yay.
And a couple of places like South America and I can't remember the country in South America, Germany and the UK. We've got somebody, and I can't track them down. I don't know who they are, but they're actually streaming our network 24/7. So it's like having another affiliate over there. We've also got, and I need to make this quick because we're running out of time. We've also got some AM/FM stations that are gracious enough and supportive enough to carry our terrestrial overnight programming package. They are WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM serving South Georgia, WJHC 107.5 FM serving North Florida, and WLBB 1330 AM and 106.3 FM serving West Georgia and Eastern Alabama. Now, why am I telling you that other than to hat tip these folks? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a radio station in your hometown that you would like to hear the Talk America programming, Talk America radio programming on overnight from 9 p.m. Eastern till 6 a.m. in the morning. Let's say your station goes dark or they're doing nothing but playing reruns of whatever took place during the day. Give them a call. Tell them to take a look at talkamericaradio.us. It doesn't cost them a thing, and we can provide them with 9 hours of nonstop programming that you enjoy listening to, that you can start listening to on your AM/FM dial in your hometown. So we encourage you to support us that way. Help us get on more affiliates. Denise, we got to go because I'm babbling longer than I should. Tell everybody good night as only you can.
Good night, everybody. God bless America.